The iPhone 17 roars out of Zhengzhou with a 200,000-strong army of workers laboring day and night. But is this Apple's last dance in China? Beyond the factory gates lies deflation, tariffs, and uncertainty. And while Apple bets on China's role as the world's factory, one exiled professor warns of an even more decisive variable: fractures inside the regime itself, where its very survival may hinge on a single question. Watch now, only on China Unfiltered. 200,000 workers, one factory, and Apple's gamble. Is the iPhone 17 China's last dance? 200,000 workers. That's the size of the human army now laboring inside Foxconn's Zhengzhou complex, the world's largest iPhone factory. They work in two punishing shifts, day and night, with promises of overtime pay and bonuses that can reach nearly 9,800 yuan, about $1,377 for temporary hires. For some, that means scraping together 20,000 yuan, about $2,810 in just 3 months. A small fortune in today's China. For Apple, it means the iPhone 17 is rolling off the lines at full speed. But while the factory floor races ahead like a battlefield, the world outside looks far less certain. Apple may have dazzled audiences in California with its new design, brighter screens, and tougher glass, but the forces shaping the iPhone 17's fate go well beyond technology. They run through the heart of China's deflationary economy and the looming shadow of US tariffs. Foxconn at full throttle. In Zhengzhou, the iPhone's lifeline beats faster than ever. Managers confess they've never seen such demand for overtime. Labor brokers flood the gates with new recruits, lured by cash incentives. On September 5th alone, more than 2,000 new hires waited outside for assignments. From screwing in parts to sealing boxes with the Apple logo, the lines churn without pause. Apple's magnetism is undeniable. In a matter of weeks, it mobilized a workforce the size of a small city. Yet this also exposes the fragility of its model. Apple still leans heavily on Chinese labor, even as it tries to shift production to India and Vietnam. Prices that didn't rise. At the very moment tensions between Washington and Beijing intensify, Apple made a bold call. It would not raise prices. The iPhone 17, iPhone 17 Air, and even the new AirPods Pro 3 cost the same as last year. Analysts see this as an attempt to protect market share in America and China, where consumers are pinching pennies. But this choice comes at a price. Goldman Sachs estimates Apple could lose over $1 billion per quarter just from tariffs. For Apple's investors, that's alarming. For Apple's 200,000 workers in Zhengzhou, it simply means longer hours to keep the lines moving, ensuring Cook's gamble holds. China's deflation trap. The larger problem is demand. In August, China's consumer price index dipped below zero. That signals deflation. Households are spending less, saving more, and choosing second-hand over brand new. The middle class, once Apple's strongest base, is drifting away. Across industries, from restaurants to electric vehicles, companies are locked in price wars, burning cash to stay afloat. For Apple, this means selling a premium product in a market that no longer thinks premium. Even workers earning overtime bonuses building the iPhone 17 are unlikely to buy one themselves. Washington's tariff threat. And then comes the storm from abroad. Just days after the iPhone 17 launch, US President Donald Trump floated a stunning proposal: slap 100% tariffs on Chinese goods. If enacted, it would hit China's fragile economy and Apple's supply chain in one blow. The politics run deep. Trump's timing followed closer ties between China, Russia, and India at the Shanghai Cooperation Summit. The goal: pressure China into cutting Russian oil imports. In this chess match, Foxconn's 200,000 workers are pawns, their overtime tied to global strategy. Why Apple still bets on China? Why does Apple continue to gamble on China despite the risks? In our view, the answer lies in 3 realities. Scale. Only China can mobilize an army of 200,000 workers in a single facility, scaling up production within weeks. India and Vietnam are emerging, but they cannot yet match this magnitude. Supply chain depth. China hosts the most complete electronics ecosystem in the world. Casings, displays, chips, packaging, logistics, clustered within a few hundred kilometers. Even iPhones assembled abroad still depend on Chinese components. Market size. China is not just a factory. It is Apple's second largest market. Abandoning it would mean surrendering ground to Huawei, Oppo, and Samsung in front of more than 1 billion consumers. This is the paradox. Apple knows the dangers: deflation, tariffs, political friction, aggressive domestic competitors, but the alternative would be even costlier. The China gamble is less a matter of choice than of necessity. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. The question is, can Apple still win in China? Apple faces a paradox. China is both its factory and its market. If domestic demand weakens and external tariffs rise, Apple is squeezed from both sides. The no-price hike strategy may win short-term goodwill, but it cannot guarantee long-term success. Rivals are circling. Samsung's Galaxy S25 Edge, its 7th foldable, is already stealing headlines. Huawei's Mate 60 Pro, powered by Chinese-made chips, is regaining ground with patriotic consumers. Apple's iPhone Air, by contrast, feels like a promise rather than a revolution. Without breakthroughs, Apple risks losing ground no matter how many shifts Foxconn runs. The bigger picture. The story of the iPhone 17 is bigger than a smartphone. It is a mirror of global contradictions. Apple, the trillion-dollar giant, trying to hold its empire together through scale and brand power. China, the world's second-largest economy, caught between deflation at home and tariffs abroad, and politicians like Donald Trump, who use trade as a strategic tool. The irony is stark. For global consumers, the iPhone 17 is a new toy at the same price. For Foxconn's 200,000 workers, it is sleepless nights, endless shifts, and the hope of pocketing a bonus. And for China, it could be the last festival before the storm breaks. So the question remains, will the iPhone 17 be remembered as a triumph of Apple's resilience, or as its final dance in China, carried on the backs of 200,000 workers who may never own the device they build? If Apple's gamble shows how China's deflation, tariffs, and global headwinds are squeezing its role as the world's factory, then what follows right below, exiled Professor Kai Xia's warning, cuts even deeper into the very heart of Beijing's politics. Behind the parades and propaganda, she sees a regime trapped in a dangerous variable that could decide the survival of the entire system. Professor predicts Xi Jinping's key survival variable. At first glance, the September 3rd military parade in Beijing may have seemed like a patriotic celebration. But to exiled Professor Kai Xia, it was something far more alarming, a direct warning to the world. Behind the tanks and missiles, she saw the naked truth of the Chinese Communist Party, a regime built on violence, the supremacy of power, and lies told openly to the international community. More troubling still, she identified the seeds of crisis, the fragile and dangerous balance between Xi Jinping and his generals. According to the Vision Times, as a scholar who has long severed ties with the CCP, Kai Xia possesses deep insight into the system's inner workings. Her analysis offers a rare glimpse into the regime's vulnerabilities. A parade meant to intimidate. Kai said that since Mao Zedong's time, the CCP has staged only 6 grand parades, one each under Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao. Xi Jinping, however, has already staged 3 in 2015, 2019, and now 2025. According to Kai, this is no solemn commemoration but a brazen display of military muscle, exposing the party's obsession with power. She contrasts this with the West, where World War II is remembered with dignity. Beijing, by contrast, uses massive displays to intimidate. To her, the scene evoked Hitler's 1934 parade, North Korea's Arirang spectacle, and Russia's military shows in 2005 and 2025. What made this year's event even more disturbing was the guest list: Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, and Iran's president sitting together. Kai called it a new axis of evil, openly challenging global peace and democracy. The deception, she added, went beyond symbolism. The CCP once again claimed to be the pillar of resistance against Japan in World War II, when in fact, Japan surrendered to the nationalist government. Kai called this shameless deception. the party lying without hesitation in front of the entire world. The global reaction was swift. The parade's sword-rattling hardened bipartisan consensus in Washington on Taiwan and pushed Europe to step up aid to Ukraine. Kai warned that if strongmen like Putin or Xi could cling to power indefinitely, say, living to the age of 150, the world would sink into decades of authoritarian darkness. For the Chinese people, Xi living to 150 would mean an unbearably long stretch under absolute rule. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. The mafia logic of power. Kai argues that the CCP's core principle is brutally simple: power above all else. She recalls the post-Tiananmen succession in 1989 when Deng Xiaoping and party elders handpicked Jiang Zemin. Deng's casual remark, "It's your turn now," revealed the mafia-style logic: not millions of party members choosing a leader, but a handful of old men dividing spoils. This same logic, Kai contends, paved the way for Xi's rise and now fuels today's undercurrents. Party versus gun, the decisive variable. Xi Jinping's ultimate fate, Kai insists, will hinge on one decisive question: does the party command the gun, or does the gun press down on the party? That, she argues, is the key variable that will determine the regime's survival. Since the 20th Party Congress, and especially from 2023 onward, Xi and General Zhang Yoxia have been locked in a tense struggle. The purge of the Rocket Force leadership in July 2023 marked the turning point. Branded as anti-corruption, it was in fact a direct threat to Zhang. Xi had relied on Zhang's military clout to secure his third term, but once reappointed, he feared the same gun that had protected him. Zhang's battlefield record and stature made him too formidable. As Kai put it, they could share hardship together, but never share glory. To contain him, Xi revived an old Wang Qishan tactic: cut off the wings, strike the tiger. One by one, Zhang's allies and protégés were taken down, including former Defense Minister Li Shangfu, Zhang's own protégé. The pressure closed in, and Zhang seemed to sense it. Before the third plenum in 2024, he kept an unusually low profile. But after the plenum, the balance shifted. Nearly all the officials who fell were Xi's men. As Kai observed, before the meeting it was the party commands the gun, Xi pressing down on Zhang. Afterward, it looked more like the gun pressing down on the party, with Zhang, now backed by party elders, visibly overshadowing Xi. The elders' dilemma. Kai highlights the decisive role of the CCP's elders. They once promoted Xi, assuming he would be pliable. But now, with the military leadership hollowed out, the economy faltering, and unrest erupting from the Zhangzhou incident to protests in Wuhan, they have begun to tighten the reins. Their dilemma is clear: Xi cannot be allowed unchecked power, yet bringing him down too soon risks capsizing the party itself. And that, Kai notes, is the thing the elders don't want to see. As commentator Li Muyang summarized, everything now depends on whether Zhang Yoxia and the elders decide to follow heaven's will. If they do, they possess both the will and the authority to bring Xi's rule to an abrupt and dramatic end. This is why the CCP's fourth plenum in October is seen as a decisive moment for the future of the regime itself. Two stories. One paradox: Apple needs China to survive, and Xi needs the party to obey. But can either last? Share your view below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you found this analysis valuable, hit like and subscribe to stay updated. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.